5 and Chapter 5 is about polynomials, so I did these notes in anticipation of a 2-hour delay, so they're not super long, but I even printed them out for you. Yeah. So you did polynomial functions in Algebra 2 and or pre-calculus. Hello, children, me. Thank you. With this part already, since you guys don't even want to listen. It's really cold.
No, you need to go to lunchroom then. Go to lunchroom.
Our lunchroom, our teacher's lounge is always super warm, so anytime I go to lunch and I come back, I'm like freezing cold afterwards. I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. I never get a lot of sleep. No. Katie McHugh was texting me at 10 o'clock about calculus when I go to sleep at 10 o'clock, and she's texting me about, what about number 10? Do you think I could come in early tomorrow for help? How do you do this? And I finally just put my phone on silent, and she just kept texting me. Which is my fault, because I give my calculus kids my phone number and tell them to text me, but I tell them in advance, I go to sleep early, kids, probably not after 10 o'clock should you text me, and she doesn't start texting me until 10 o'clock. So. Because
this is a college level.
you don't need to text me.
Why? This is a difficult class. You have people write this class.
What? I give it to calculus kids because they need to text me. But I don't think you guys need it. Anyone I wrote a recommendation to has my address and my phone number because I filled it out for you, remember? You did, but you turned in your application, so. A polynomial function, people always get scared. In pre-calculus, I make them write this out a lot, and they always get scared by this. It's really just saying this is a power, right? Usually we write it with the highest power, so they're saying the nth power, and we usually go down by 1 and end with nothing, right? Like you could write around this like 2x to the 4th plus 3x squared plus 7x minus 6, right? That would be a polynomial function when you just kind of go down.
Are you knowing something like that?
That's not a polynomial, so no, not right now. We did, and algebra 2. But yes, we did do all this in pre-calculus. Big thing to know that your coefficients have to be real numbers, and n has to be a non-negative integer. And so part of your homework today is looking at equations and saying, are they polynomial? So the big thing you have to know is that you can have no negative exponents, because that's not a polynomial. That means you couldn't have letters in your denominator, because that's the definition of a negative exponent. I put no crazy stuff. That means like no x's under a radical, no x times y together. Like anything that looks kind of weird that doesn't look like this is not a polynomial, and we'll do an example of that. We're going to also graph these eventually. Who knows? I feel like we're going to be on this section for like 2 weeks because we're just going to have 2-hour delay after 2-hour delay. And...
Yay!
Oh my gosh.
2 weeks, that means I got 2 weeks left.
When you graph a polynomial function, it is always a smooth curve. It is not sharp corners, no sharp edges. And it's also always going to be continuous. That means you could draw it without ever picking your pencil up. So like an example of a polynomial function would be like this lovely graph here would be a polynomial function. Smooth, curves, continuous, no breaks, no gaps. Yes? So what would the domain of every polynomial function be? Always. Which we'll get to eventually. What about this one? What would the range of this one be? So what about... Right, so we'll talk about, maybe you remember from algebra 2 and pre-cal, like even functions, the arrows always go in the same direction. That's in this section, I just haven't put it in here yet. Odd functions, they go in opposite directions. So sometimes the range is all real numbers, but sometimes it's not, depending on if it's an even or not function. But we're jumping ahead. The degree of a polynomial function is really important because we're going to talk about how do you solve a polynomial function, and the degree has to do with how many zeros it has. So remember that the degree is the largest power of x that appears, or the largest exponent that you see. So part of your homework today says determine if the function is a polynomial. If it is, say the degree. If not, say why. Not so bad, right? Number 1, f of x equals 2 minus 3x to the 4th. Do you think that's a polynomial? Yeah, there's no x's in the denominator, there's no negative exponents, there's no crazy stuff going around. So we're going to say, yes, it's a polynomial, and the degree is the highest exponent. Sometimes it's the first one, but not always. And on this one, there's only one exponent, which is 4. So we would say degree 4. And I tried to pick some here that I thought maybe people would struggle with, like number 2. Would you say number 2 is a polynomial? A lot of people want to say no because there's no x in this, but this is a polynomial. It's just a straight line. It's a linear function. What about the degree of this? What would you say? So we would say 0. Because if you think about it, you agree that you could write this as 3x to the 0. I mean, we don't because x to the 0 is just 1. But it's like there's no 0 degree there. Okay? What about this one? H of x equals the square root of x. Not a polynomial. We've graphed the square root of x before, but it's not a polynomial function. So we're going to say not a polynomial. And yes, I hope you can abbreviate polynomial and know what it means in your notes later when you look back at it. It says say y. What are we going to say? Crazy stuff would be what I would say on my notes there. I think we could say because square root. With me on that? I feel like I could have put way more notes on this. We're going to get done with this way too early. I only have 20 minutes. I drew this lovely graph sitting at my desk with my mouse. I was pretty impressed that it kind of looks like it's smooth. Well, because I was trying to get it not to cross, like I just wanted it to touch there, and it was a little tricky with my mouse here. Real 0 is a polynomial function. Anywhere that your graph crosses or touches the x-axis will be a 0 of a polynomial function. So most of the time we think about when it passes through, but it can also just touch here. And those of you that are in pre-cal or used to be in pre-cal, Bryce, will have a little leg up on people that didn't take pre-cal, because we're going to talk about like what that means when it just touches and comes back down. And in Algebra 2, I don't think you really talk about that, but in pre-calculus we talk about this thing called multiplicity, and it's very exciting. So yeah, it could be a double root. Yes. So here we go. It says if f is a function and r is a real number for which f of r equals 0, then r is called a real 0 of f. So if you plug in a number and you get 0 out of it, that means it's touching the x-axis. And so that's the definition of a real 0. You have all taken Algebra 2 before. You know that there are imaginary zeros. So that's why they specify real 0, because we do have those darn imaginary ones, right? What? Oh, no, it's fine. Root 0, same thing. And on the next page, in Algebra 2, when I teach Algebra 2, I always stress this next thing very importantly of how zeros and factors and all these things that mean the exact same thing are very important. So it says, the following are true about real zeros if you know f of r equals 0. So 1, r is a real 0, or Vaughn says real root. Remember, root and 0 are interchangeable. So if you know it's a 0, remember that then of the graph, you know that r is an x-intercept. And I checked this in the book. Like I thought it should be a x-intercept because x doesn't start with a vowel, but it says that the grammatically correct thing to do is say an x-intercept. What do you think about that? Ask Ms. Dobson about that. What? Oh, but I don't know. I'm not. An hour? Interesting. I just learned some new grammar. So, and if you know it's a 0, then if you write it like this, you remember what we call that? X minus r. So like, if x equals 3 is a 0, then what does x minus 3 represent? Starts with an F. Ends with an actor.
Factor.
Function. I'm going to get function again. It's a factor. And so really important that you can recognize if you have a factored out polynomial, you know all the zeros because you can just set each factor equal to 0. And we say that R is a solution to the equation when you set it equal to 0, which I hope that you know that. To find the zeros of a function, you set it equal to 0, and that's how you find the zeros of it. So I just kind of summarized this up for you. This is all in your book. I kind of just tried to sum it up as much as I could, but I feel like this stuff is really, really important as we go forward. The real zeros of a polynomial function are the x-intercepts of the graph, and they're found by solving the equation f of x equals 0. I find this stuff so important that there's a good chance on a quiz in your future I'm going to make you tell me some things. Zeros could also be called what? Solutions, x-intercepts, roots. Or if it's a 0, then x minus r is a what? A factor, right? These are really important relationships that you want to make sure that you know. But on our homework today, all we're really doing is it a polynomial, state the degree, and then if they give you the zeros, I want you to be able to write the function, and then that's all we're going to do today in our shortened time. So it says find a polynomial function of degree 3 whose zeros are -3, 2, and 5. So, first of all, if you're writing a function, make sure your answer is an equation, like f of x or y equals. If you don't put that on there, I'm going to take a point off, and then you'll be really mad, because you'll be like, I just forgot this, and then Vaughn will cry. And
Hey,
Vaughn's upset still about his
I am not
bonus.
upset.
He is now. Good job.
He was upset last week about his bonus. He came in after class, even, in the next hour, to tell me about how wrong he was. Well, the problem is on his bonus, he gave me an answer of like 8.3, when the real answer was 8.3 repeating, which really I wanted it as a fraction. And I didn't give any partial credit, and he's mad about it.
Every other man.
I might have given you like half a credit.
He did not. He's telling lies right now.
No, I did.
He's telling lies. He didn't tell him the whole story.
I did. I showed him the paper.
Anyway, it's extra credit. I don't give partial credit on extra credit. If it was a real problem, if it was a real problem, you might have got some points, but not extra credit. It's wrong. 8.3 is 8 3/10, and 8.3 repeating is 8 1/3.
Yeah,
And
you
1/3.
said about 0.1 or something. You're like, 0.1 is 1 and 9.
I know, that's what I'm telling you. That's why I'm a stickler for fractions, not decimals, because you people think that you can just put a fraction there and it's the same, but it's not.
Well, I'm done with this one.
These are the zeros, and so the connection here is if they give you the zeros, you should be able to write the factors. So I thought I would write it like this for the first one, and just think about moving that back over, right? If you wanted to get this equal to 0, do you agree you could think about adding 3 over, and that would be the same as the factor x plus 3? And if 2 was a 0, that would be the factor x minus 2. And if 5 was a 0, it would be x minus 5. You with me on that? But I want you to like work that out, which means I want you to multiply it out.
That's a lot of really.
It's not. I do these two first. Tic-tac-toe, ridiculous.
You know what I'm talking about?
So you get x squared minus 2x plus 3x is plus x in the middle, minus 6. We should maybe be at the point in our lives that we could FOIL that out without having to write plus 3x minus 2x, maybe. But maybe not. Is Bryce asleep back there? Bryce! Move up here in front of Lane. Get your stuff up here. So then, remember, you can only FOIL two things at a time. So you do those two, and then you take that and you distribute it over here. So x squared times x is x cubed minus 5x squared plus x squared minus 5x minus 6x plus 30. Who can complain about that? That's just good old fun there. I didn't pick it out. It's from my book club.
What?
Which is even weird.
Did you say you're in a book club?
I am. But I don't think anyone else is reading the book. I
You
pick it
have
out.
a mom, and then you have a book club. Do you have a life class?
I know. It's good to read. It's good for your brain to read.
What are you reading?
It's called Life After Life, and it's really weird. This girl keeps dying, but she comes back as herself, and then she gets to relive the mistake that she made the first time, so she doesn't die again. But then she just dies a lot. Like seriously, she's died like 10 times already, and she's like 27.
Are you have like a book yet?
But it changes. It's like she doesn't make the same mistake. Like she drowned once, but then the next time someone saved her before she drowned, and then one time she got killed by her husband that beat her to death. But then the next time her life was so different that she didn't even marry that guy.
So she got smarter and she married a different
No, you're not listening right. But it's very like she was born in 1910. So World War I and World War II is happening, and it's just really weird. And so she ended up marrying a German, and like is friends with Hitler's girlfriend, and it's weird. It's a weird book. But then she just died in Germany. She died in England 4 times.
No question. Does she start her whole life over?
That was my question, and I think the answer is yes. But the book doesn't start over every time. But every time she dies, the very next chapter is back on the day she was born, February 10th, 1910. I know already because I've read it so many times that she died. February 10th, 1910 is her birthday, and so.
She goes back.
Well, no, it just starts over, and so then certain things change, and so like she's aware of it. She's aware of it when she gets older. Like she died of the flu because the maid went to something and caught the flu, and then she came back and she died of the flu. So then the next time she knew that the maid shouldn't go. Like she had this feeling in her, like she had this feeling of like, oh, something's gonna happen, and so she tried to keep the maid from going, and she kept trying. Like she pushed the maid down the stairs, and like the maid broke her foot, but then she still went and got the flu, and so she still died. And then one time she put a note on the door that said, "We locked up, go stay at so-and-so's house." But then the next day, she still came back and got the flu again. And so it's so funny, because anytime she dies in the book, it says, "And then darkness fell." That's what it means when she dies. But then after that time, like, she died 4 times from the flu. So like after the 4th time, it was like, "And then the darkness came again." It was just like, yet again, she died. So, it's a weird book.
And how many people are in your book club?
Well, it's an online book club, so I don't really know. But we were supposed to post something on Saturday, and the lead lady of the book club was like, "Sorry, I'm behind on my reading. I'll post something later. Post your questions if you have them." So I posted a question that said, is she reborn from birth on, or did she just relive the part right before she died? Because it doesn't really tell you in the book. And nobody responds. So then I answer my own question, because I kept reading, and I was like, well, I think, and then no one responds, and so I'm about to write, is anyone else even reading this book anymore? Because I feel like I'm the only one.
You can't stop reading it now, because I want to know.
Oh, I know, it's good. I cried yesterday because she died in Germany with her daughter, Freda, and like all this war's happening, and Freda. I think it's Freda. I think it's Freda. As my book, I can read how I want. And she had like bronchitis, but there was no medicine because of the war. So the girl's really sick, and her husband already died. And so then she's just like living in her apartment with no walls because the bombs exploded it. And then she went to the pharmacist to try to get medicine for the bronchitis, but there was no medicine. So the pharmacist gave her poison. So she gave her daughter poison and then took poison herself. And I cried. I cried. But now she's back alive. German. I don't know what's gonna happen. Okay. I don't know. Okay. I just added time, and it even said, like, this is the first time that she chose death over life. Because all the other times she's been killed or just been tragic. She died 4 times in London from a bomb coming from the Germans, and then now this life, after she finally escaped that, 4 times dying in a cellar from a bomb. Because her life just worked out the same way every time, that even though it was different, she still ended up in the cellar on that night when the bomb exploded.
Well, she's gonna keep doing the same thing. Maybe I'll make it through this time.
But it's not like she remembers dying. It's confusing. It's confusing. Vaughn.
Freedom.
I think it's Freda.
It's freedom.
Okay, we have 2 minutes.
It's Frito.
Freedom!
What if they gave you a graph like this? Could you tell me what the zeros are? So could I say, if it's 0, this is the one that people struggle with. Isn't that just a factor of x? You don't have to write x minus 0. My whole book analogy is on recording right now. Sorry, Amber. I know you're gonna watch this. Just fast forward all that.
That was after what you...
After I already did it, I hope you fast forward. I'll write a note on there. This would be x plus 1, and this would be x minus 1. And again, FOIL it out.
So you know for sure that Amber watched this?
She's going to, because she's gone today. And I told her when she picked the notes up, I'll record the notes, and she said, thank you.
I'm gonna go home and watch this just so I can hear about this book.
You
What's the name of it?
It's called Life After Life. It was the top 10, it was in the top 10 books of 2013. It's weird. But now I'm one of those people that even if it's a weird book, like I'm like over 300 pages into it. Like I can't give up now.
How many pages is this thing?
500 and some pages.
I'm not reading this book.
But the weird part is there's not chapters, there's just dates. And every time she dies, it repeats the date that she died, and then it repeats the same dates. And so the ebook has different page numbers. And so the person in charge of the book club's like, read to this page, which is not my same page number, and it says like, read to February 10th, 1910. Oh my gosh, that's in there every time she dies. I don't know what I'm supposed to read to. So I just kept reading.
The lady in the book's just like,
People I know you're the only one reading this book.
your coach right there, and she just.
It's probably like some big
It's not. It's a book club. My former English teacher started the book club, but she's not the one.